6:30, if council members could come to their seats. We will open up public comment. Gives any member of the public an opportunity to speak on any item that's not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes. There's also comment cards in the back as well. So we'll start with Barb Bushy. Please state your name and address.
My name is Barb Bushy. I live at 2037 East Fourth Street, Fremont, Nebraska. Totally different subject for me tonight. I was talking to somebody today. The police department in Fremont is doing their very best to watch the traffic that's on First Street. It is still horrendous. And on 19th Street, that's awful. The person I was talking to, we got to discussing, there are some speed bumps in Fremont. I think Washington Heights has some. And I'm wondering if we couldn't have something on 19th and First Street. You know, because it just, I was said at night, if I go to bed about 10 minutes till 11, this guy goes by on his little motorcycle quiet. If it's 5 till, he just flat lies. And I swear, people know I'm one of them that wanted that 25 miles an hour, because it seems like when they get to my house, it's but that's all I'm gonna talk about tonight. But I really think speed bumps, and I don't think they're that expensive. You know, maybe 3 of them from Bell to Luther. That might calm people down a little bit. But thank you. Oh, one thing. I do want to invite every city councilman and the mayor to come sit on First Street and sit on 19th Street sometime and just see what that traffic's like. And like I said, the police, they're stopping people, they're issuing citations. But when the mice is away, or what is that? When the cat's away, the mice play. And trust me, there's a lot of mice playing on my street. Thank you.
Larry Marvin.
Good evening. My name is Larry Marvin. I live at 1945 Morningside Road, Apartment 124 in Fremont. And I'm talking about vocabulary. Number one, ultramontane or ultramontanism is a brand new word for me. And I'm just reading this past week. I have a major in history, so I have read too many or too much about leaders that have had us murder fellow human beings and making humane slaves. This clarifies why we humans have killed another just following our leader. So we just follow the leader and kill people. Number two, democracy. There are a lot of Americans and news media that incorrectly use the word democracy. Our United States of America is not a democracy. We have a republic. We frequently pledge our allegiance. Excuse me. We pledge our allegiance to our republic and to our flag, and we'll do that tonight. And we frequently pledge the allegiance to our republic and our flag, okay? Any law or ordinance must be constitutional, or it is not a legal law. Each of us Americans has an obligation to see that Larry Marvin has 100% of all rights, known and unknown. Because before, when the Constitution was, we didn't have airplanes, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have a lot of stuff. I have all these rights and everybody else, 100% of all Americans. Okay, number four, a month ago, number three is middle class. Those who used the word middle class most likely failed their American history class or civics class, because all of us Americans are first-class citizens. And Larry Marvin is one of the opinion that the 9th Amendment to our Constitution is the most important amendment of our elected officials have taken an oath to uphold and protect our Constitution. Or a month ago, a nice young man addressed this council during citizens' comments, and that nice young man said a prayer, which I am to be protected from someone forcing his religion down my throat. So just maybe the protesters that have been protesting our freedom of the library and freedom of books and banning books and whatever, it's illegal. I have rights to not have to listen to someone stand in front of me and control my time and say a prayer. And they don't have the right to ban a book. So I am protected from anyone forcing his religion down my throat. So just maybe the protesters are getting close to ultramontanism. That's that new word. And thank you. And I have a copy. I'll leave the copy so each one can have a copy. But that's my vocabulary.
Sandra Murray.
Sandra Murray, 1745 North 9th Avenue. Well, here we go again. I really want to be finished fighting against the child grooming going on in the library. It has been clear that we do not have the support of the city council on this matter. But then the library staff wears a I Wear Band book pin and they order a new book, Rainbow Parenting, a guide to raising your 0 to 10-year-old queer by Linz Amer. The library staff has proven to us that there is truly a war on parents for our children's minds happening here in our own small town, and that they cannot be trusted. So you may ask, what is this new Rainbow Parenting book that is such a big deal? This weekend, there was a pride parade in New York City where the attendees chanted, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." There were also numerous nude sexually deviant men gallivanting in front of children in this parade. So what does that have to do with Fremont? Well, the author of this book that is currently on order for our library posted numerous videos of herself marching in that parade. She is a woke extremist who uses her new book to blatantly instruct educators to bring queer and gender affirming lessons into their classroom without parental knowledge. The author even goes so far as to acknowledge that her writing is radical queer work for preschoolers. The book is full of current woke propaganda. These new gender ideas are an experimentation on children. There's no science or history that proves that any of it is beneficial to children. However, on the contrary, the mental illness and suicide rate for children in our country is at an all-time high. One has to ask, why does the library continue to buy books by these extremist woke authors? Why this book? Choosing this book means another was not chosen. Does this book bring literary value to our community? Do the parents of Fremont want their children indoctrinated on those woke gender ideologies in school without their knowledge? Lastly, we must ask, why does a librarian want our kids to read so-called banned books of pornographic nature? And why does she continue to order books written by extremist authors? It seems that she made her intent very clear. These actions by the library staff have been a slap in the face to the parents of Fremont who care about their children's innocence. The library has spoke as if they are going to change the selection policy to maintain a more balanced collection. Upon review, I can see that the new policy changes being made do nothing of the sort. The verbiage is being changed to ensure that no one has any say outside of the librarian on what books are brought into the library. The policy changes are a way to further limit community input. The library has shown that they have learned nothing from the last 6 months of conversation about their collection choices. One would think they'd play it safe and not continue to order the most controversial books, especially considering the library is now asking for $3 million of Fremont taxpayer money. But no, the librarian continues on her blatant individual quest to indoctrinate the young minds of Fremont. Councilmen and women, we ask that you stand up and do something. We are already protecting our children by not using the Keene Memorial Library. This is a fight for the rest of the children in our community. Like they have said, they're here and they're coming for your children. This is a calculated war on parents, and the librarian knows exactly what she's doing. Don't rubber stamp that $3 million without change. Perhaps our library needs a conservative librarian and staff that better fits our overall community beliefs, because clearly this is a poor fit.
The next person on the agenda has a topic that's on the agenda tonight, so there'll be an opportunity to speak on that item on the agenda. So this is only items that are not on the agenda. So if you are here, we have, again, 20 minutes. This is open public comment. If you wish to speak and you just came, there's a sign-up sheet up front. Please sign in. There's also comment cards in the back.
Go ahead. Steve Ray, 1445 North Irving Street. I'm here to say that I believe the citizens of Fremont are being left behind by all the growth of the city. You've been pushing growth, and I think the citizens are falling behind and getting left out, a lot of them. You had the tech park, and I know a lot of you weren't involved in starting that and doing it, but we spent millions up there. And we still might have to pay back the state $1 million or so. And what have we actually gotten out of it so far? Not a lot. We had a bond issue for a police station, and I think everybody agrees we need a police station. It didn't pass, and we went ahead and spent some more money for another study to give us 3 scenarios of what we could possibly do with the old station or rebuild downtown or something. And they brought that back, and nobody seems to know what's about that now. I've asked a couple councilmen about it. Well, they don't know what's going on. There could be a plan. They could be working on it, but I think the public has the right to know what's going on there, whether they were actually pursuing a plan, one of those, or something different, or what. Same thing with fire station. We've had a couple studies on it, a matrix and a safety one now. Is it going to turn out like the police station? We got the plan. We know what we should do. Are we going to implement it? Do we have the money to implement it? We spent $750,000 about for plan and design of a multi-department building, which I'm sure it'd be nice to have one like that, but they can get along. The police station is a lot more important. I'd like to see them save the money, scrap the multi-department building for now, and proceed with a fire station, which, you know, Fremont's growing and said, we're going to need a satellite. We need a new station. And those are more of them, health and safety. That's what you're charged with giving the city of Fremont first and foremost. We'll have a shortfall in the library of $3 million, which there's a lot of controversy on that library. And I don't mind saying, I don't want my tax money going for what they're buying. I'm sure it'll have to be made up somewhere. We have the inland port. It says it's not going to cost the city anything. Well, I have to wait to see about that. And also, was any of those people actually, and I know it's been going on for a couple years, but did anyone actually talk to every family out there and tell them what would that entail? Like they couldn't probably get a loan or anything? Did anybody actually sit down and talk to them about what this would do? But you're in such a hurry to zone all that property at one time. And you know, it's going to be years before it's all bought up and used. So I think you're just jumping the gun. And that's another thing that the citizens have to end up doing. I don't see that great a thing. We were told when Costco came, boy, we'd get great jobs and lots of money. We'd see great benefits. Well, one of the benefits I've seen is, yeah, we're getting a beltway south, but it's cost our roads department for a number of years. And he talked to any citizen in town, and they'd like to see a lot more money put on their streets so that they're decent to drive on. Every street in town could be resurfaced, redone, whatever. And I mean, people I bump into when I talk to them, and they know I come to council meetings, and they said, well, how come they don't spend more money on the streets? We're spending it over here in this new section, but we aren't spending it downtown, or we aren't spending it on this street. So I think you need to rethink your priorities on growth. Yes, you need growth, but I think for several years, the citizens have paid the price and they're slipping back farther and farther. I don't think you can ask hardly any citizen today if they're better off now than they were 5 years ago. Just something to think about.
Go ahead.
Greg Carmen, 67 South Maple. I just want to talk about some vacant properties in this town. 3 of them in my particular neighborhood that I see my council rep finally showed up. Thank you. But there are 3 properties that Mr. Jensen and I have been going back and forth talking about over the last several years. One of them on South Maple Street has been condemned and still standing after over 15 years. And it was fire damage. Another property on First Street in Pebble has been vacant for at least 10 years. And another property on South Platte Street has been vacant for at least 7 years. And I guess my question is, and I know there's a lot of political stuff that goes on, but why can't the city do something about these properties and give these property owners an ultimatum? Because our neighborhoods are deteriorating. And it's because these houses and properties are neglected and vacant, and it just, it didn't drive down the value of my property, but if you look at the neighborhood, you think it should. So I'm asking the council maybe to, I don't know, go through, rewrite some ordinances or something and hold these property owners financially responsible and get these things either cleaned up, torn down, do something. And it kind of goes with what this person just said about the citizens are being left behind. Well, the neighborhoods are being left behind. You pat yourselves on the back for all this new housing and apartments and everything and affordable housing when there is no affordable housing anymore. So let's clean up, try to do something to make these people clean up their properties and clean up the neighborhood, and one thing will lead to another, and maybe there will be such a thing as affordable housing again. Thank you.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. A few things that has been brought up in May, and now your first meeting in June that has gone to the wayside. Your discussion of the Port Authority. The Port Authority is important, and it's important to Fremont. I can appreciate that. But you as a council voted to approve all 1,500 acres and be fully rezoned. The first thing you had to do in 2022 was say, yes, we want the Port Authority. And then once it got approved and went funneled through the state of Nebraska, because you're going to be asked to consider annexation. And with annexation will come TIF. TIF, tax incremental financing, can be a boon to the economy, a very light in a substandard area. Well, you approved Port Authority to be 1,500 acres. You have less than that now TIF'd, but look at the millions that we don't have in taxes. Again, supporting our sudden and intense growth. And when this was occurring, the largest being Costco, which I supported as a council person and still do, because of the opportunity for employment and the opportunity for many businesses that now exist to grow, and the addition of many other businesses. But the point is you have to start exercising caution, because with the Port Authority in 1,500 acres being rezoned, you now have used a strong arm for existing property owners who have homes, residences, etc., and interest in their own property that they now own, telling them what they can and cannot do as of now and in the future. How did that work out for you with Tech Park? Is 100% of that land spoken for? Has it all been sold? $7 million plus of city monies, not inclusive of the $983,000 we may or may not have to pay back to the state, is on the table already expended for those 80 acres. Several of you have said you would never want to repeat what happened with Tech Park. I support Port Authority, but I don't support the decision to rezone all 1,500 acres at this moment in time. If those property owners wanted to sell, then why aren't they contracted? If those property owners were in agreement, why did several of them come to several of us out in the public? And I know a few of you now seated and say, we were not aware that this was going to tie our hands on what we can and cannot do on our property. With annexation and with TIF means an improvement in services, because barren farm ground, whether it's 100 acres, 450 acres, or 1,500 of unimproved, that doesn't have city infrastructure, doesn't have utilities run to it, doesn't have sidewalks, et cetera, can be, underneath the state of Nebraska's law, be declared blighted and substandard. 26% of all land within the city of Fremont right now, the city jurisdiction, not the ETJ, has been declared blighted and substandard. You're going to add 1,500 acres to this in the near future. First step is saying, yes, we want Port Authority. Second step, adopting the bylaws and having a board appointed. You now have rezoned it, 100% of those acres. You have used your authority to tell property owners what they can and not do with their land. I believe that was a wrong decision. And there's been a lot of outcry by the public. Several of them have said they have tried to call Ms. Ganem, Ms. Lathrop, and Mr. Sukerman, gotten no response. I don't know if that's factual or not, but those are the three names that were used. That's disappointing. Why cannot anybody, whether it's me reaching out to Deb and not get a call back, or whether it's Mr. Yerger reaching out to Ms. Ganem, not get a call back because you don't like us, because our personalities don't blend, but you're still a representative, like it or not. We still expect you to listen to us and take in consideration whether you like what we have to say or not when you make a decision. More often than not, there are several of us that repeatedly come here to speak before you as voices for others. Please start to listen. Thank you. Okay.
My name is Lynn Albright. I live at 1737 East Linden. And I'm going to make it really short and simple, and it actually comes off of what Sue just presented. Sally, you're on our city council. Your husband serves, I believe he's head of the Newport, that board. I think you're great. I'm sure he's great. I find it to be a conflict of interest for you to have any say in what goes on with that in your role as a city council person. And I appreciate your service, but I think that something needed to be said. Thank you.
Go ahead. Hello, my name's Todd Eby. We're new to the community and we love it here. And I just want to ask the city council, what do you want the fabric of Fremont to be? The morality of Fremont to be? We're in a war for our children's minds, their hearts, their souls, and the sexuality of them is under attack. You all need to be very cognizant of that. It's coming at it everywhere. News, TV, movies, music. And the library? Are you kidding me? To allow some of this perversion in there? I'm shaken because I'm just furious that people would allow this stuff to happen. So I want to ask you again, what do you want Fremont to be known as? What is the fabric to be? You have some say, you have some control on what will happen here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, welcome everyone. The time is 7 o'clock. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the Community Development Agency meeting and call it to order. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Eight members are present, Mayor.
Item 1 on the agenda is Resolution 2023-002 to approve Second Amendment to RD Leasing Redevelopment Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Jaycott, City Attorney. This is a second amendment to the redevelopment agreement that was reached with RD Leasing. It was laid out in the original redevelopment agreement that they would be doing this project in phases and asking for the increment financing for each phase for the indebtedness that's involved with that phase of the project. They've presented the city with a second amendment to cover phase 2 of the project. And you can see there that they're asking that the TIF indebtedness be at an amount of $277,000. And that's an estimate to be based upon the base evaluation. And the valuation they have there is $1 million for the second phase. The requirement for the city will be to file a notice to divide with the county by August 1st, which I'll work with the clerk on that. I'll take any questions.
Okay. Questions for legal? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Seeing no comments, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Von Baeren.
I'd move to approve resolution 2023-002.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn the Community Development Agency meeting. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. I'll go ahead and open the regular city council meeting and call it to order. Time is 7:02. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Eight council members are present, Mayor.
Next is mayor's comments. I would like to recognize 4 individuals tonight for service awards with the city of Fremont. We have Robin Menninger, 5 years of service. Robin has been with the city of Fremont as an engineering associate since 2018. Jana Wilsusan, 45 years of service, started with the city of Fremont as an account clerk 1 in 1978, then moved to a customer service assistant in 1990. Most recently in 2015, Jana was promoted to a utility office associate. Christopher McManus, 25 years of service. Christopher started with the city of Fremont as a line worker apprentice in 1998, then got promoted to a line worker first class in 2000. Most recently, he was promoted to line crew supervisor. And then Jason Freeze, 25 years of service. Jason started with the city of Fremont as a power plant operator 1 in 1998, got promoted to power plant operator 2 in 2002, then got promoted again to a power plant operator 3 in 2011. And finally, his latest promotion to a power plant shift supervisor in 2019. So I want to thank these individuals for 5 years, 45 years, 25 years, and 25 years. So thank you for your loyalty. That's tremendous. Yeah. That's all for my comments. We'll go ahead to item 1 is motion to adopt the current agenda. This would be for the June 27th, 2023 regular meeting. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to adopt.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to public hearings would be the second reading of ordinance 5647. This is the Morningside Point Second Edition voluntary annexation. We'll now have staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the second reading for the Morningside Point Second Annexation. It is associated with the final plat that was approved conditionally at the last meeting. Staff recommends approval. It is, again, the second part of this development. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you. I will open the public hearing. Are there any comments on this item?
Glenn Kai, 2550 Deerfield Avenue. I just hope with this new second edition that somebody goes out there and keeps an eye on them. Because the first edition was put in 1.5 feet higher than the city's elevations were supposed to be. So that means they pushed the drainage 1.5 feet higher. So if they come in there and do that again in the second edition, that side of town's going to be screwed. Thank you very much.
Any other comments on that item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there additional comments from council on this item? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold, this would be second reading. Councilman Sukram,
We'll make the motion for second reading of ordinance 5647.
okay. Councilman Vaughn,
That was second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Will now have second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at Kate Avenue and Theo Street east of South Luther Road, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on second reading.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilman Ellis.
A short question on 3, some discussion on 12 and 15.
Are there any other items? Any items from the public? Okay, seeing no other items, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items 4 through 11, 13, 14, and 16. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Von Baron,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 3 is a motion to approve the June 14, 2023 through June 27, 2023 claims. Authorized checks to be drawn on proper accounts.
Mr. Mayor, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. I have a document we need to add into the record. It is the official expenditure approval list for the additional claim that I had sent out. The numbers that appear in the agenda are correct. It does include this 850, but we'll need
Okay.
you guys to vote on that, please.
Okay, I would take a motion to receive the document. Councilman Jensen,
Motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
And this item replaces page 68 in the agenda.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Ellis, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just noticed this today, so I forgive me for not calling you directly, but I noticed we purchased 3 trucks in the authorized checks. And then below that, we paid 3 county property taxes or 3 claim registration. Is that the 3 trucks that we're approving on the 10 agenda item? Different trucks?
Yes.
So we're approving them on 10, which we just approved on the consent agenda, but they're already paid for. But the money's being with. We just approved the check to be sent to them, right?
If you choose to, yes.
So, okay, and then have we paid for the registration?
That's what the county treasurer, we're paying sales tax when applicable, and then
Okay,
the registration.
okay, so the trucks haven't been delivered yet or anything?
The trucks are in Fremont. They're basically delivered by inadvertently, but yes.
Okay,
So we haven't taken-
okay.
we
I
haven't
just want to
taken-
make sure. These are the same 3 trucks that we're talking about. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the council on this item? If there are none, I'd take a motion to approve the claims. Councilman Jensen,
Make a motion to approve.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 12 is resolution 2023-158, authorizing the Public Works Department to spend within procurement guidelines for newly proposed pedestrian crossing at Jack Sutton Drive and Sunridge Drive. And I have staff report.
Good evening, Council. Justin Zetterman, Public Works Director. So what you have before you is a signalized crossing of Jack Sutton Drive. It was brought to our attention that there were some concerns that there only being the shared use path on the south side of Jack Sutton, that kids leaving school and going into the new Sunridge development were being forced to cross the street in the middle with no other option to get there. We looked at and discussed two alternatives. One would be building a sidewalk along the length of there behind the currently undeveloped but platted lots. And the other, what's being presented here, a rapid flashing beacon signalized push button signal like you have on military. In discussions with the developer, the sidewalk was not well received. Based on what we've seen at military, this rapid flashing beacon has been successful. And given that the trail system that these people would be getting on is on the south side of Jack Sutton, this is probably something that in the long term we would want to do anyways to provide that safe access. So this why we came to the conclusion and recommendation of putting in this signal. This did go before the UIB today, and the UIB voted unanimously to recommend not doing this. And made a separate motion to recommend the construction of the sidewalk. The city council, by municipal code, has the ability to tell anyone within the city that does not have sidewalks on their property to build the sidewalks through resolution. At which point, the Public Works Department's job is to contact them, and they get a certain number of days to take care of that. If they choose not to, it then would fall on our department to get that sidewalk built. And very similar to a paving district, that cost would then be assessed back to the land. So though the city would be paying to put it in, it would be paid for more like an assessment district. And that was what the UIB recommended. And that would be going based on their recommendation from Johnson all the way to Luther. That would be the first opportunity you'd have to cross Jack Sutton at a stop condition is at Luther. In the end, these do not have to be mutually exclusive. They serve two functions. The sidewalk certainly enhances the safety for the kids walking to the Sunridge development from school or continuing on further west in town. While there'll still be people that want to cross this street, kids included, to get to that shared use path. And so Public Works is supportive of either option or both, whatever the council feel is best, and in this case, safest for the kids. So, have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? Councilman Ellis.
If I understand you right, I think I have to applaud the UIB. This is a safety issue for children.
Yes.
And I think we need sidewalks on both sides of that street. We've had history in the past of kids going from one side of the street to the other. And I think we need to do everything we can to give them no excuse from crossing streets when they don't have to. And from my understanding, there's sidewalks there already on some of that north side of the road. Is that correct?
There is a short section next to the new apartments that have been
Yeah,
put in.
so I applaud the UIB for changing their mind, or not changing, but
Mhm.
deciding to go with sidewalks. We definitely need to be looking for the safety of the children there. Thank you.
Councilman Vaughn.
I would echo some of those same sentiments. I believe I was the person who brought this to the attention of the city because I pick up my kids from school there on occasion. And my concern is that kids are still going to cross willy-nilly in between stacked cars at a stop sign and not proceed all the way down to that flashing beacon. I think we have to proceed with paving that other side. That's the only real safe option in my estimation, my opinion. Maybe secondarily, we would find the need further down the road for that flashing intersection there. But I think we need to explore the concrete solution first.
Okay. Councilman Von Baron.
Justin, I'm just trying to get clear in my own mind. The sidewalk work that we're talking about, obviously it serves the development area. Definitely agree. Obviously, we need to support the children in that area. Are sidewalks normally considered part of development costs? Does the city normally put those in for developments?
Even on these double fronted lots where you're backing up to an exterior street, the homeowner would typically be building those at the time they build the house. And
Okay.
so it would get put in chunk by chunk as those lots are built.
But we're looking at possibly putting it in at city expense, or maybe I'm not following your logic.
Because it still would be the responsibility of that property to build that piece of sidewalk. We could come back if that's what you desire at the next meeting with the resolution, where you guys would express your desire to have that sidewalk put in. The cost would then be assessed to the properties. So most of it would be assessed to developable ground. We do own 300, 400 feet adjacent to Luther that would be the city's expense to put in.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And so just to be clear, are you recommending or that we do the pedestrian sign as well as the sidewalks? If that's, I mean, tonight, if we took action on the sign and also directed you to come back next meeting with the sidewalk resolution, is that what I'm understanding you?
That is certainly something that we believe both are important solutions, and doing both. We have the money in the budget at this time to move forward. If you'd like to see that built at this time as well.
Okay. I'll go to comments from the public on this item.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I'd like to start by also commending the UIB board for making the correct decision, in my opinion. That's why I was here to speak on this item tonight. So I applaud them for doing that, for Mr. Ellis's statements, for Mr. Vaughn's statements in support of doing sidewalks rather than crosswalks. As a part of what I wanted to say tonight, I wanted to let you know that I've received a lot of comments, being a former council member, with regards to the walk light that's on First Street and Howard. And I can say that as a witness of this, that system is flawed. I have repeatedly, at least 3 times last year, watched vehicles blow through that intersection when the children had the right to walk. Fortunately, they were either attended by a parent or a grandparent, or their parents had trained them, don't enter the intersection until everybody is stopped, or they would have been dead. And so I'm very cautious about wanting to do that on Jack Sutton Drive. That's a 3-lane street, not a 2-lane street that you're going to ask children to cross. And even if you give them the light, it doesn't mean that the traffic is going to stop. And the traffic on that street, on First Street and Jack Sutton Drive in the morning and afternoon, is horrendous. And they don't follow the speed limit. Besides, we've tested with a speed gun. They don't follow the speed limit. So you're putting children in peril. So certainly this was a public safety issue for students. No questions asked. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and it has already been alluded to, and I'd like to enter this into the record formally in case anyone has any questions. City engineer did comment on it, but if you have any questions about the city's right to build sidewalks, that is to contact the property owner and say, you're building sidewalks, you got 30 days. And if you don't do it, we will, and you'll get the bill. It is in our city code in section 8405, and I would ask that that be entered into the record. Just in case you needed it for reference purposes, because you're certainly well within your right. The UIB was as well. I think they did the right thing. Certainly needing sidewalks on both sides of the street is going to be advantageous long haul. And here's why. The kids that live in the First Street west of Luther shouldn't have to cross First Street to get to the wider sidewalk that's currently by the power plant. They need to be able to go right across at a four-way stop along First Street on the north side onto a sidewalk that takes them down to the school. So this impacts more than just Sunridge, the homes that are there. Certainly those children need to have safety, but so do the children further west. And so extending the sidewalk all the way down to Luther is the right choice. I walked that today, or drove that today. That's about 0.5 of a mile for the whole thing. About 1/10 of that is already sidewalked. And so the developer is going to have a responsibility for the 2/10 to the east of Sunridge Lane and probably another 1/10 to the west. And the city owns the property to the corner. So the city will have some obligation here to put sidewalk in because it's city property. The developer will have obligation to build that into their lot costs for the remainder based on the way city code is defined. So I encourage you to follow the lead of the UIB in this regard and do the sidewalk option to protect the children as best we can, because that really should be number one. And I'm hoping that you all see it that way. I encourage you to make the sidewalk issue. With regards to doing, in addition to that, the crosswalk push button thing, I say with caution, give that some thought before you do that. I would encourage you to think about that rather than do that tonight, because my witness says that doesn't always work. And that's a 3-wide street. There may be a need, but if you need to stop traffic, then you probably should put a stoplight or stop signs and make that a 3-way stop so that vehicles actually have to stop for children rather than to blow through that when the children think they have the right of way. It's an accident waiting to happen. It hasn't happened at Howard, but it could have easily happened 3 times last year. We did have an accident on Military without that. So I just encourage you, please take the most cautious route possible for the students at our middle school and Johnson Crossing. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, back to council. Open it up to what the council wants to do on this item. Councilman Vaughn.
Would offer a motion that we table this current resolution in front of us and ask to come back next meeting with a proposal for the sidewalks.
So the motion is to continue this to the next meeting with a proposal on the sidewalks. Okay, Councilman Jensen.
I'll second that.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 15 is to receive the traffic committee meeting minutes for June 20th, 2023.
Good evening, Justin Zedwin, Public Works. These are the minutes from a meeting we had last week. There for your information. I'd be happy to answer any questions about any specific items that you're interested in.
Okay, questions, Councilman Ellis.
Yeah, the one I wanted to pull, Justin, was number 8, the 4-way stop at Morningside and Luther. You guys, I think, decided not to do anything with that right now.
We are doing a little more research into it. Typically, you try to only use a 4-way stop when there are warrants for it. So this was a pretty
Yeah.
unusual case. We don't have any accident record that supports this need. We have anecdotal evidence of near misses.
I would hate to wait. My concern here is Morningside's transitioning from, I mean, we're getting a lot of residential down that street
Yes,
on
sir.
the south side. And the more we get, the more it's interfering with the commercial side on the North Street. And I know that intersection, I've done it myself, gone in, oh, shoot, a train. How do I get out of this thing?
Yep.
I think we got to put something in there. And I'm just asking if you could, I know you kind of said you need more research, but I would hate to wait and do more research until we have accidents. There's definitely a threat there just because of the train and the bypass. And I think the city needs to address it somehow at that intersection, whether it's temporary stop signs or something. I think you're right. We don't have any traffic studies that say we have a lot of accidents there. But I just feel like, gosh, every time I go through there, I see that Morningside is changing and we need to change with it. We need to be in front of it as far as becoming more residential, more people living there on that south side. And I think we need to start making that transition from a truck route to more of a residential route. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to make that first step.
Okay, we can certainly look at the temporary. It will require probably some advanced warning signs as well. That's another fear, is throwing stop signs on a 45-mile-an-hour road where these trucks are not used to that. There's also potential for accidents. So, but yeah, we can certainly look at doing it temporary until we have a final answer for you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff on this item? Comments from the public on this item?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. This is the other public safety item that I wanted to address, and I'm glad that it was pulled off the agenda so that we could address in particular item 8. If you've been down to this area, we have Deerfield Apartments, we have the Deerfield subdivision, we have Morningside Point, and new plats to put more homes and apartments into Morningside Point. We have heavy vehicular traffic on this street, semis in particular, 45-mile-an-hour speed limit that was just noted. I'd call your attention to the fact that there are no sidewalks along Morningside Road on the north side or the south side, except from Deerfield Parkway over to Luther. No place else. So if the children coming from the apartment complex or Deerfield or Morningside Point in the future want to get across Morningside Road to go to Howard School, Middle School, Johnson Crossing, they need an access point. The most logical access point is going to be Luther and Morningside. There's already sidewalk going northbound on the west side of Luther. It's the only way that you can get up to First Street on a sidewalk because we don't have sidewalks on the other side of the street, which is the power plant side. So my encouragement here was to make sure that we're considering this not just a vehicular problem, as Mr. Kai mentioned at the last meeting, said people are U-turning in the intersection and accidents waiting to happen and all those. And those are valid reasons to make an adjustment here for the vehicular problems. But I wanted to raise the student safety problems because we haven't provided access for those students that live in that part of town. We still have a problem at the railroad tracks. I don't ignore that, but we do need to do something to get them across Morningside safely. It's probably a combination of things, but first and foremost, I like the idea of stop signs. And that was suggested by Mr. Kai. It would reduce the speeding that goes on Morningside, which you probably should reduce the speed limit from 45 anyway. This has now become a local city street. It's not a highway. And those trucks can't stop on a dime, so they should go slower because we do have children living down there and they got to cross the street. 45 miles an hour doesn't give them a lot of time to get across safely. So need to think about that. But as far as this issue is concerned, I think this 4-way stop is a really good approach. Whether it would be permanent or temporary. If you want to study it, temporary is fine. I think permanent's the right thing to do long haul anyway. So I would get those up. It would clear up your vehicle problems. It would save some jake braking noise, which has been a complaint down on that street as well, because the trucks speed up and then they roll down and they don't want to brake, so they make a lot of noise. If you break that street up with some stop signs, that will be less likely to happen. Long-term, that probably needs to be local truck traffic only, not a through cut. They should be using the bypass. That's what it was built for. And we were told when the bypass went in, Morningside would not be a through truck route. And if that's the case, it doesn't need to be 45. So I do encourage you to ask the traffic committee to really look at the speed limits as well going forward. But for now, I would ask that you not ignore item 8 and just research it, that you actually do instruct the engineers to put up the stop signs as was discussed by Councilman Ellis, and to get those in place. If you want to study it more, do it with the stop signs up rather than with the stop signs down, and give the kids a chance. Thank you.
Denise Kai, 2550 Deerfield Avenue. For those of you that don't know, the reason for this Morningside traffic talk is because of the Bell Street Viaduct being closed. And our main concern is this isn't just a 6-week job. This is 7, 8, 9 months. Who knows when or what's going to happen. School starting, that's going to be another issue as far as traffic. And no, you can't control who everybody drives and what they do, but it is a scary intersection right now. And yes, the Beltway has taken the chicken trucks that used to come Morningside. Pretty much they're going that way now. But the traffic that does come for structural and S2 being on that side of the viaduct, they're beyond 45 miles per hour. And that's the scary part. Yes, traffic with cars is a scary accident, but we have had the one accident that happened before Bell Street Viaduct was taken closed, and that was a semi with a car, and the gentleman did live, but it was very scary. And it's just a precautionary thing right now. And you say temporary, permanent, I don't care, whatever. 4-way stop sign, you've got one at First Street, you've got one at Military, you got one at 16th Street, you got one at 23rd Street, all the way out to the bypass. So if you want to make it temporary, permanent, I don't know, but if it can slow down that 45 as far as speed limit, or just to slow them down to put another stop sign up there to make it a 4-way stop. Our concern is with that train when it blocks too, because they do go up there and there's 20, 25 cars waiting to think that train's going to move. And sometimes it's been up to 26 hours that it's sat there. And you got these cars turning around at rush hour traffic, trying to get back to Morningside and take off to the east again. Plus the grain place that is right at the tracks on Luther Road, they try to turn that corner. And supposedly they had made a wider corner for those semis, knowing that business is there. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. They just throw off the side, or they're waiting for the cars to back off so they can make a wider turn to go. They have the turnoff lane down on Johnson Road, which would have been ideal now that we do have that grain company there. Also, the new business that's right on the corner is a trucking business. We're going to have more semis that'll be pulling in and off of there for Morningside Road. So our main concern, I guess I could have said, just let it go for what it was. But with Bell Street Viaduct being closed and the idea of trains being stopped, the traffic, yeah, it's scary. And to say the least, I don't want them in my yard and in our front window. So thank you for listening.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I just want to say thank you to our traffic committee. These were some really detailed notes, and we have Mr. Zetterman on there, our street superintendent, Carrie Hoffert, Chief Elliott, Chief of Police, Veronica Trujillo, in our Public Works Department, engineering. We are taking the citizen comments and we are working through them, and you can see it in the notes in the backup how serious they're taking these, and I just want to appreciate that. I would just say we can move forward and address that intersection. I just want to make sure we don't create more issues with You know, and if we need a slow speeding sign or a slow sign to get to that stop sign, I would hate to create additional issues until we at least let our engineering and our traffic committee take a look at that before and bring back a recommendation. So that's just my thoughts on that. Councilman Vaughn.
I did have one other question for staff, if I could. Justin, I was just curious on number 4, as far as the no longer allowing trucks through traffic on Broad Street. And I see that the recommendation is there to let it remain in place as is through the remainder of the year. Is there a logic behind that?
Part of it is Bell Street being closed. We're a little gun shy of closing anything more than we have to. We're gonna have closures on Lincoln Street coming up next month with some sewer work and overlay work there. So at the moment, the paving isn't complete on the bypass. I'd like to certainly at least wait until that job is truly done and everything's removed. I drove down Broad today and was thinking maybe we shouldn't be waiting because I was just surrounded by trucks.
And that's my point and reason for asking, is that I've been kind of keeping an eye on that, and there is still more truck traffic going and cutting through than there should be, I think. And I just feel like the sooner we could get those signs posted, and maybe the enforcement isn't as harsh as it needs to be on the beginning end of it, but we put the message out there early and often, and then we can start enforcing as needed, because there are still far too many trucks cruising through town.
Sure, I'd be happy to bring a resolution forward for you, and you guys can I'll suggest a date and you can discuss it and pass it that way if that works.
Thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
I like that idea. I would ask maybe that we ask that you bring a resolution to us next meeting.
Okay.
For removing or at least putting signs up. And like Councilman Vaughn said, we start getting people used to the idea of no trucks on that street. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Councilman Jensen.
No, if there was no other comments from the council, I'm just going to make the motion to receive the traffic report.
Okay. Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 17, receive audited financial statements for fiscal year end September 30th, 2022, as presented by Forvis LLP and city staff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Jody Sanders, Director of Finance, City Administrator and Treasurer, wearing too many hats these days. So this is an item that was continued from the last meeting. We had Chris Lindner from Forvis here going over his audit presentation. I very briefly went over some of the information, highlighting the information that's available to you in the audit itself. I guess I would take any questions at this point.
Councilman Ellis.
Got a lot of different avenues here, so I think I'm just going to talk and then I'll let you answer some of them. But first of all, thank you very much for the audit. I mean, I understand, and after looking at other cities, I think Columbus is a week ahead of us submitting their audit. So we're not the only ones out there going through this issue of getting audits. Norfolk got theirs in March, same company, but Columbus using the same company. They're getting theirs in. So I understand it's just human resource issues that we're having issues with. Couple of questions, and I think I sent you a spreadsheet that I've been just keeping track of. I've been in my 5th year of city council, and so this is my 5th audit, or at least maybe my 4th audit that I'm going through, and I learn something every time. And I would encourage our city councilmen, this is our one shot as council members to kind of get a real good look and feel of the finances of the city. And so the first, I have to say the first year it's too much, but after I've been through this several times, and just starting to get a feel for what I can find in here, and nothing alarming. I'm just so there's one thing that I saw that when like the Norfolk has a certificate of completion that they get. Are you aware of that? Is that an organization we just don't belong to, or?
No, we excuse me, we do belong to that organization, the Government Finance Officers Association.
We just never get it certified.
We don't go through that because we would have to include all of the statistical information that you find in the back. It is very useful information, but with the size of staff we have, we've never had the ability to, and the resources available to us to compile it, to be able to present that. It
Okay.
would certainly be a goal, but
But
there's
their,
a cost to it.
their audit report was a lot easier to read because of the charts and everything. So I'd encourage us to figure out, once we get the staff in place, that we shoot for that as far as trying to improve our limits. I did notice that there was more in the backup this time than there was last time, and I appreciate you giving us the slideshow or the slide presentation that we didn't get. But then there was also the documents. And I believe these were the amendments to that we didn't get last time, or there, and maybe we did. But there's certain amendments here from the audit. There are 12 of them, attachments.
Right, those would be
Scheduled of uncorrected misstatements.
correct. Mhm.
And so we had 12 of them. Is that kind of correct? And just for comparison, I saw that Columbus had 4. So when you have a adjustment or uncorrected misstatement, can you give me an idea? And I don't want you to take up my time, so I'll let you answer it when when I'm finished here. But they actually stated in the document from the auditor that we as the governing body should get the details of the audit. And that's something that I saw in the audits report this time that I didn't see, or I might have missed it, but I didn't see, where they were very explicit in stating that it is their job to present details to us as the governing body.
Mhm.
And so I just want to make sure that we as the governing body are getting everything that was given to the city as far as any uncorrected misstatements or any modifications. I know we got a clean audit, but getting clean means there was probably some stuff going back and forth. And I think I just would like to ask for anything that was given to the city under the consideration that, hey, we needed to. There's one instance here where one of these uncorrected misstatements, it's a $3 million, the very first page, a $3 million difference, where I'm assuming they're asking us to make a change, or we didn't make a change because it was a adjusted past. Or so I really enjoyed looking through this. It brought up more questions than I can talk here in the 5 minutes given. But I really would like to be able to make sure that we as the governing body of the city are getting everything that was given to the city management team with consideration for all of these corrections that we needed to be making. So if I could ask for those, I don't know what those look like, and maybe they're too far over our heads to understand, but now that my time's up, I'll come back on the other side if you can answer these.
Sure. You as council, you did get that. You mentioned the presentation that Chris provided last time. And with the email that I sent the city council, I gave you the long form, which would include these. Typically, these are for those charged with governance, not necessarily, and regulatory agencies, not necessarily something that everybody posts. I mean, you can go on the state auditor's website and find those as well. But while you were speaking, I did go back and double check that these were part of what you were sent. You were sent the long form.
Okay. The
So-
long form, we were sent via email,
Yes,
not via the backup last meeting.
we didn't have it to put in.
Oh,
the
that's right.
agenda.
That's right. We didn't have
Yes.
anything.
Correct.
So
Yes.
this time in backup, we got the screenshots, and then we got the full report,
Mhm.
the unabridged. Okay. I'll release my time.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, for those who don't know, we are somewhat short-staffed. I think that's a fair statement. So the budgeting process is a little bit behind, so that the finance group has been holding individual sessions for councilmen, and those are much appreciated. I sat in on one yesterday, and just kind of a follow-up to that, Jody, regarding our risk management on page 188. We say that there are no limits on the amounts invested in any one issuer. And I'm just not sure what that means in the age of bank failures and shaky financial institutions. I guess it seems like an appropriate question. I'd just like, is there a translation to that statement? No limits on the amounts invested in one issuer?
On page 168 of the agenda? Did you say?
I think it was 188.
Excuse me, because I was confused there. So.
Yeah.
No, those were I'm looking at the agenda.
Of the report. Page number.
Sorry, I'm not with it right now. It's probably.
It can't be because the report isn't 188 pages long.
Okay. All right. Well, and I phrased it badly then. I'm sorry about that. But just in general, as we look at amounts invested in issuers, I would assume these are other than banks. So I'm just curious where those funds might be placed, and we say we don't put any limits on those. Just trying to understand the terminology.
Sure. I apologize. I'm not able to find tonight
That's
exactly
fine.
where
I'm sorry.
you're looking, but I can tell you that state statute requires us to make sure that we have limits ourselves, that anything that is beyond the 250,000 that is covered by FDIC insurance has to be collateralized in securities. That includes the city's name as well as the bank's name.
Okay.
So that in the event that there would be any kind of bank trouble, our deposits are safe, and that's by state statute.
So even in excess of 250,000, we're protected.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that answers my second question. So thank you.
Additional questions from the council? Comments from the public?
Red Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. Appreciated some of the questioning that was going on with regards to the report that we didn't get as a member. Public didn't see this report last time. It was maybe given to council members early before the meeting, but the public didn't have it. So I was pleased to see that questions are being entertained, largely because in the past, having served on council, I had some of these same questions myself, and I would hope that you as council members, besides Mr. Ellis, would be concerned in knowing some of this as you sit in authority and governance over this, as you receive the report. You really need to understand what you're receiving. And so in that vein, there's a discussion about proposed and recorded adjustments. So the question I would ask, what specifically are all of those adjustments? And it would be great if Forvis would actually provide you, the council, all of those items that in a form of written documentation that outlined what those adjustments were and why they were necessary. With regards to the uncorrected misstatements, again, it would be great if Forvis actually provided some underlying written documentation to you for each of those adjustments, and whether or not those adjustments were a continuation of anything that they wrote up in the prior year's audit as well. That is, are you looking yourself as to whether or not we're resolving from year to year the kinds of things that they are having difficulties with for us, and they are telling us something with regards to adjustments need to be made or not made or whatever. Looking for pattern. That's one of the things that we were looking at, and that's something that Forvis could give you. They have that documentation. I would encourage you to ask Forvis to do that as you receive this report. The other one had to do with I think it was on page 112 of the original attachments. So it's probably at some different page. I'm sorry, because we didn't have anything to work with initially. And it had to do with auditing standard statement number 7. And so, if the identification of those items could be made and the council could be given documentation associated with those as well by 4 of us, that would be wonderful. The reason that I make those statements, we asked for that material last year, but we didn't get it from the auditor. And unfortunately, the auditor didn't get to come back to this meeting so that we could at least ask you to ask them for these questions, and you don't get another chance to talk to the auditor now that you've actually had a chance to read this report. I think it's really unfortunate that they didn't come back to this meeting. It may have been inappropriate for them to come to the last meeting when you hadn't had a chance to review it before the meeting. But I think certainly they should have been here to answer questions directly this evening of both those that would be raised by public and those that you might have as well, or could entertain and get answers for on behalf of the public. So for those things that I just mentioned, if in your receipt of the document, it would be great if you would get those pieces of information for the record. I think it'd be helpful to both the council and to the public. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, back to the city council. Councilman Ellis.
I'll try to finish this up. Just a couple of questions. So the attachments that were given to the city, the very first page, and I mentioned it earlier, there's a misstatement of $3.2 million, 30.87% of the current liabilities. Can you just give us a layman's terms of why we were so different from what the auditor said and we needed to, they considered it a misstatement? And so I'm just kind of curious on the request that was made by citizens. Was there any documentation when they look at this? Because they found 12 uncorrected misstatements. Was there any other documentation that besides this, it just said, here's this misstatement, here's the percentage of change, and that's what it was? And so I would like to see any other documentation that went back and forth between the city concerning those 12 misstatements. And then lastly, Jody, I had sent you an email with the attachment with the last 4 years of our audit, and I was going to bring 10 copies and I just forgot. So I apologize to the council that you don't have this in front of you, but I am looking from year 2021 to 2022, general funds ending 55 million last year, 60 million this year. So we went up about $5 million in the general fund ending balance. But interesting that we had 16 million in unassigned fund balance in 2021, and we're down to 13 million down in 2022. So at some point in time, and I know you're going to help me out with this as far as where did that $3 million go? Because we did have a 29% unassigned fund balance, and now we're down to 22. So, and then there's some other things in here as far as street improvements. We're up to $15 million in the street improvement fund. So if you could address that a little bit. And then committed for capital improvement projects, we're at 7 million. That's an all-time high. So if you could, if you could look at that sheet and just kind of go over some of those totals and kind of give us an idea of, okay, this money is in this fund because this is what we're going to be using it for. So 2 questions there. Thank you.
Thanks. First of all, I'd like to talk about the adjustments that were noted. There were not 12 separate adjustments. It appears that way. Again, reading the detail behind it, you'll see across the top that some of those are talking about government-wide financial statements, which are the first 2 pages of the financial statements. And then behind that, you'll see governmental activities or governmental funds, and then business type activity. And so the same, if the numbers start recurring as you go through, the $3 million that was listed there as a misstatement
I believe it says at the very beginning of it, it shows that it's a restatement of the beginning balance in for 2022 between governmental funds and business type activities. So it's not that something was, I don't know quite how to say it, not necessarily missing, but in the wrong bucket. And some of those were generated by the auditors helping us at the end of the last audit and putting things in different buckets than we might have put them. And so to reset that, you'll see that it'll refer to beginning balances. What that means is the change from one year to the other. So, and I can ask for more information, but we did not get much more information than that. They talked to us throughout the audit. And unfortunately, on some of these, the person they spoke with was Dan, and he's not with us. Then talking about the differences in fund balance, I've pulled up last year's audit for the same page. We're looking at the balance sheet of governmental funds, not necessarily the general fund, but governmental funds, going from nearly $56 million to $60 million. One of the things that I'd like to point out, the conversation about the unassigned fund balance moving from 16 million down to 13 million. You'll also note that the amount that was committed for capital improvement projects went from 3 million to 7 million. And that's basically just a flip. In the 2021 audit, that should have been updated, because when you all committed funds at the end of 2021, that number should have been the $7 million you see in this year's audit. That number did not get updated. And it just, the offset to that is unassigned. It's either restricted, committed, assigned, or unassigned. And so that's where you see that change there. Street improvements, the issue is, it is what it is. The projects that were budgeted for, but that were not complete during 2022, that's what happens. The upside to that is we don't levy property tax for that purpose. It's street funds, it's gas tax, it's also sales tax that comes in. So you'll see that as Justin's working through his capital improvement plan, he has lots of plans for that $15 million. Yep. That's right. He's going to do his best to get that spent down. Were there other funds or areas that you had concerns about? So that's LB 840. Well, there's also an amount up higher that you can see under sales tax that shows notes receivable. Those would be the loans that we have, whether they start out as notes receivable, they're not necessarily being paid back, but we're recognizing those forgiveness. Yes. Yep. Those performance-based loans. Mm-hmm.
Additional comments from the council? Councilman Jensen.
Well, with no additional comments, I'll make a motion to receive the audited financial statement from Forvis.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Councilmember Ellis, I kind of started the vote, so thank you very much. Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 18 is the second reading of ordinance 5648, creating street improvement paving district. PD 553 of the city of Fremont, ordering the construction of street improvements therein, providing for publication of notice of creation of said paving district and providing when this ordinance will be in full force and effect.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, go city engineer this time. This is the ordinance we had before you 2 weeks ago. This would be for the second reading. This is an extension of Howard Street that will connect with Donna Street. And as we discussed, we'll create a loop road in there with Garden City to improve things for that area. We would ask if you are willing, after you hold the second reading, to suspend the rules and hold the third, just as a timing issue so that we can go on to this 30-day remonstrative period. And once that's done, get it out to bid, and with any luck, still have a little time towards the end of the fall to get this short section of paving done.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, comments from the public? Seeing no comments, additional comments from council, and if there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
Make the motion on second reading of ordinance 5648.
Councilman Dinkins.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor. An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, creating street improvement paving district number PD 533 of the city of Fremont and ordering the construction of street improvements therein, providing for publication of notice of creation of said paving district, and providing when this ordinance shall be full force and effect on second reading.
Councilman Vaughn.
Would make a motion to suspend rules on third and final reading.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, creating street improvement paving district number PD 553 of the city of Fremont and ordering the construction of street improvements therein, providing for publication of notice of creation of said paving district, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to new business, item 19, resolution 2023-162, authorizing mayor to sign the third amended interlocal solid waste management agreement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item came to us, the coalition looked at a number of things. They looked at the agreements, the bylaws, the rates, and they're proposing after, some deliberation in the master planning process that these changes be made. The last time this agreement was addressed was, I believe, 15 years ago or so. And, a lot has changed in the actual operation of it. And so what they looked at was adjusting the interlocal agreement so that it matches how it's operating, not how they intended it to operate many, many years ago. And so a couple of those changes that were brought up during the hearing that was held here on June 14th was it's a group of 20 odd communities. And so, but many of those communities are smaller and they don't participate on a regular basis. And so they were looking at, the main communities, which are Fremont, Norfolk, and Columbus. And then once a year, having those additional communities decide upon a representative so that actions like this in the future don't take the action of, 25 separate bodies, and it takes a fewer number of bodies. The entity would be able to adjust quicker on the fly. And I didn't participate in the writing of the interlocal, but I can kind of share, what I experienced through the meeting that we held here. And Councilmember Jensen may have additional comments that he'd like to make. He's more involved probably in this. So, okay.
Questions for staff on this? Councilwoman Ganem, your light's on. Did you have a question? Okay. Okay. Seeing no questions, comments from the public on this item? Seeing no comments, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-162.
Councilman Dinkins.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next item is item 20, resolution 2023-163 to approve second amendment to RD leasing redevelopment agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Jacut, City Attorney. This is the same item that the CDA considered at the beginning of the meeting, second amendment to the redevelopment agreement with RD Leasing. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Questions for legal? Okay, seeing none, comments from the public on this item? Seeing no comments, any additional comments from council? And if there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-163.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 21 is ordinance 5649, amending truck routes. Have staff report from Mr. Zetterman.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Public Works. As part of the traffic committee, one of the items we discussed was a complaint that was brought to us from somebody who was seeing a lot of trucks he felt on Maple Street between First Street and Dodge Street. Currently, First Street is an east-west truck route west of Bell Street. Dodge Street is not. The truck drivers who were going down First Street and making a turn on Maple to get to their destination on Dodge Street were not violating our code for truck routes. They were staying on the truck route until the next local road to get them where they're going, which is how the ordinance is written. So as far as just saying you cannot go down this road would be a stretch. So our thought would be, given the number of businesses along the south side of Dodge that do have large trucks that go to them, we could just designate that as a truck route along with First Street and hopefully alleviate some of the traffic on First Street that is going to those local businesses and not all the way through from Bell to downtown. As a part of this, I think it would make sense to do the same, just to connect Union from Factory to First. I underestimated how easy that might be to do with the railroad. So if you are inclined to pass this tonight, I would ask that you amend it to only change Union from Dodge to First Street. I will continue to work with the railroad. I still think it makes sense to get another way across the tracks that's a designated route. But at this time, I wouldn't want to go forward without more information from them and getting their buy off.
Do you think you might have that by the next meeting? Or, I mean, this is the first reading, so we could.
I'd be surprised.
Okay. Questions? Councilman Vaughn.
Maybe not a question so much as a comment. I think that anybody who's driven down Dodge Street any number of times knows that's pretty much already a truck route. So
Yep.
I think this makes sense, and I understand the need to connect that little piece that follows the railroad, and I think we should proceed and have you continue working on that. Well, when they make a motion to approve ordinance 5649.
Are we to amend it from Dodge to First Street? Is that?
That would be my recommendation, and then we can come back once we've had more time to
So
talk with the
approve
railroad.
this ordinance to amend it from Dodge to First Street.
For
as a truck.
Union, correct.
So my motion would include that as an amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second? Councilman Jensen?
I'll second.
Okay, this would be to amend. So cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now I take a motion to the ordinance as amended and hold first reading. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make that motion as amended.
Councilman Vaughn,
No, second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska to amend chapter 5, section 2-5-203, subsection 5 of the Fremont Municipal Code of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing provisions in conflict with such amendments, retaining non-conflicting provisions, providing an effective date of such amendments, and providing for a publication and ordinance in pamphlet form on first reading.
Okay. Moving on to item 22 is consideration of hearing for removal from office following written charges signed and verified, charging Councilmember Mark Jensen with misconduct. Item A is move to waive attorney-client privilege and receive memorandum from the city attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Travis Jaycott, City Attorney. The city received a verified complaint regarding Councilmember Mark Jensen. The complaint alleged that Councilman Jensen violated city code by playing Keno within city limits. And section 2-208 of the city code says that upon the filing of written charges signed and verified, which occurred in this case, charging any such officer with misconduct, and the officer in this ordinance references city council members, the council shall by resolution set a time for hearing not less than 5 days, no more than 10 days subsequent to the passage of such resolution for a hearing on such charge. So first, regarding the allegations, I request that the council waive attorney-client privilege and receive a memo from our office, which is previous communications that were provided to the council regarding this specific issue, as well as the authority that email kind of relies upon. So I'd ask the council to approve a motion waiving privilege and accepting these documents.
Okay, Councilman Ellis.
I'm a little hesitant to go forward with this waiving. All we're supposed to be doing tonight is simply voting on a resolution that's mandated by the council to move forward. Would this information be relevant during the hearing and not now?
This information is relevant, I believe now. I'm not sure what you mean by mandated by the council.
Well, mandated by the municipal code. We don't have a decision whether we're going to have a hearing or not. It says shall. So whatever's in this memorandum that you're getting is not going to change anything tonight.
Right.
But simply, we need to be voting on when the hearing is going to take place.
So you're interpreting section 2-208 as mandatory, that the council does not have discretion to decide whether to have a hearing. And that is a fair reading, I believe. I believe it would be interpreted as the safest reading of the ordinance. But with this type of ordinance, there's a state statute that authorizes the council to provide for the removal of elected officials. And this ordinance says shall pass a resolution for the hearing. That could be interpreted to say any hearing set has to be passed by resolution, because then it goes on to say it has to be set subsequent to the passage of such resolution for a hearing on such charge. So that could be interpreted to say that the council does have authority to determine whether there should be a hearing at all. And to me, if this were to be challenged for some reason, because the state just authorized council to set the rules on how they want to go forward with this, any petitioner would have to prove that the council acted arbitrarily and capriciously. And usually a court would defer to the government body's interpretation of its own ordinance in this type of instance. So to me, the ordinance could be read to say the council does have discretion, which is why I'd recommend receiving this. And also, I believe it's just there's been a lot of publication about this issue, and this is something that we believe we have an ethical duty to provide to the council and to the public.
So shall doesn't mean we have to.
No, it says shall by resolution. If you want to set a hearing, you have to by resolution. Yes.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Going back to A that we're on, actually, in the interest of full transparency for the citizens of Fremont, I would move to amend the motion that we also waive the attorney-client privilege for the email dated June 22nd, from the city attorney that involves the Keno issue, and 2 current city council members and 2 former city council members. I think it needs to be included on A.
What date was that? June 22nd.
That was June 22nd. You sent a email.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have a position on that one.
Okay. There any other comments from the council? Questions for legal at this point? If not, I'm going to address the amendment. I don't see any, so I would, is there a second to, this would be to amend this current attorney-client privilege, is that correct?
But it would include
To include,
the other information that you have given.
okay. Okay, so that's a motion,
Yes.
okay? Councilman Vaughn,
Yeah, I believe it's pertinent and we should see it all, so I would say.
this would be, so cast your votes for item A.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
I have it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are now on item B to move to approve the resolution 2023-164, setting a time for a hearing not less than 5 days, no more than 10 days from approval. We'll have, again, staff report from legal.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The document that I handed out was an email from me to council.
Just a point of order, I think you just voted on the amendment, you haven't voted as amended.
It wasn't it.
There was no motion on the floor, so it's, yeah. Now, the communication that we sent, so I actually have to eat a little crow here. My initial reading of the ordinance, the Keno ordinance, says council members, elected officials shouldn't receive payments from a Keno operator. So there's a question asked, should council members play? And I advised against that. But then the complaint was filed and we had to dig in a little deeper into the issue to investigate whether we need to go into code enforcement. So we looked into it and a few things were brought to our attention. One is the previous versions of the ordinance actually included a line that said elected officials shall not play the game of Keno on top of the language that's already in there. That language was removed, I believe, in 1997 by an ordinance, and that was included in the documents that I provided. The current version of code references, there's another section of code that specifically states, has the same language that's in the regular Keno ordinance for elected officials, but it also states that the mayor and city administrator and utilities general manager shall not play the game of Keno. So with that combined with the language in the current ordinance against elected officials playing Keno, it's our office's opinion that elected officials can indeed play the game of Keno. They just cannot receive payments, compensation, or anything for performance that were provided to the Keno, the operator, the Keno operator that is contracted with the city. And you also see there's a complaint filed with the Department of Revenue on this specific issue with the state, and the state did concur with our opinion, and Department of Revenue agreed under our ordinance, city council members can play the game of Keno. So.
Okay, questions for city legal from the city council? Councilwoman Ganem.
I don't think further questions at this point. So we actually had 2 rulings that were opposing one another. One, we advised a group that said, do not play, and the other said we could. And when I read it, there is nothing in the ordinance that said we could not. It was very specific on who was prohibited, correct?
Right, the ordinance you're referencing is regarding the city administrator and the mayor and the utilities general manager. Obviously, when you're looking at these, you want to take an abundance of caution with them. But when it comes down to enforcement, that's a whole nother different, deeper level of analysis.
Councilman Vaughn.
So when I compare these two sections side by side, it was already fairly apparent to me, in my opinion, that there were distinct differences from one section to another. And one of them is very explicit that says these folks cannot play Keno. And the other one is silent on that issue. You compare those side by sides, consider them in totality as part of our larger municipal code. It becomes readily apparent that that the attempt here is invalid, because it's in black and white right here. And then when I further learned that this was specifically addressed in 1997-ish, and that's why that last sentence is not present on the other section, is because previous council set out to remove that, and it was done so. And so, yep, you read the black and white, you couple that with the other section, and then the previous action by a previous council, I think that there isn't any real need to approve a resolution on this. I just think that would be a fruitless effort, and I don't see any point in doing so. Let some others talk if they would like.
Okay. Any other comments from council at this point? Questions to legal. Councilman Dinkins.
I think we're skirting, well, we haven't said the issue exactly. I'll just read the ordinance, section 2-505. Last sentence, the city administrator, utility general manager, city clerk, treasurer, and finance director shall not play the lottery during their terms of office. And that's under participation in city authorized Keno lottery operations restrictions. That's what it says.
Councilman Ellis.
I've been a councilman for 5+ years, and the very first thing that was told to us when we, including Mark Jensen, in our orientation was do not play Keno. And that was told to us not only by 2 other lawyers sitting in your exact same seat, but you told us don't play Keno. And that's what the citizens knew. They knew it because we were told it. I can't play Keno. People knew that we were told not to play Keno. And that's why I have a real problem is now that you were given the opportunity to put opinion on it, and you came back and said, don't play. And then we come up with this instance and your opinion changes 180 degrees. The optics here look extremely awful, like we are the elite and we get to make and change the rules as we want, and people that are living their lives have to follow the municipal code to a T, and if they don't, we're there to give them a citation or a reprimand. And so that's what it's really difficult. The citizens need to understand that we as a body are the ones that give the license to the Keno operators. We are the ones that says, you can have that, you can have that. We are also the body that says those funds that come in, you can have money from the Keno receipts. You can have money from the Keno receipts. That puts us in an extremely difficult situation as citizens, as city council members. And I can see why they don't want us to play, because we are on both ends of that spectrum, giving out licenses and giving that money away. So when it states here that we're not supposed to take any funds whatsoever, that doesn't include winnings.
Are you asking me now?
Yeah.
No, you have the opinion in front of you, and I'll admit my initial advice was over an abundance of caution, and I'll admit, digging in deeper to the issue, I was wrong. At least it was wrong on, the safe side. But and as far as the conflict of interest issue that you raised, that is a legitimate issue. That's why I think the previous council has restricted council members from playing Keno. That's not in the ordinance anymore. So just because you have a violation, we're just, what I'm telling you is it doesn't violate Fremont City Code, and the state agrees.
I just feel like this, we're changing the municipal code, not changing, we're just misinterpreting it differently for our advantage. And that gives me an upset stomach being a city councilman, knowing that we can interpret it however we need to in order to, because you interpreted it one way and then you switched and interpreted another way. And there are many lawyers before you that interpreted it that said, don't play Keno. So I tell you what, this just eats at my stomach, because I don't want to feel like I'm part of an elite group up here that we can get an interpretation differently because we are now in a situation where we need it. And that's what makes me feel bad.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Mr. Von Baron and myself went through the orientation together, and never once did I hear anyone tell me anyway that we were not allowed to play Keno. Never. So.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Councilman Lathrop is correct. I don't see anything or nothing was said to us. And I think that's a lot of what the confusion is in this. To add, just for a little bit of history, I actually started getting questions on this topic back in probably February or March. And it hadn't thought about it. My wife and I like to eat at Keno. I thought, well, maybe it's relevant. I have a relative who does play. So later on, it came up a couple of times. So I just simply asked city legal for an opinion. And of course, that's when we came down with the fact that it is, in fact, the initial said it is illegal for councilmen. I actually argued against that, because my position was that winnings really aren't considered remuneration or compensation. And the response was pretty firm that no, in fact, it is wrong. And I accepted that. And so I did. I asked specifically, I've been told, I asked Councilman Yerger, former Councilman Yerger, Councilman Ellis, I think Susan was in that same class, came in. They were admonished. So I think the point is there's a whole lot of chaos around this. And as late as yesterday, I was actually arguing, just if you just look at the ordinance itself, there was a question to me whether or not it truly was illegal to play. But I think what bothers me more than anything is, as Councilman Ellis pointed out, within 30 days, and basically on the day that the story broke, we had an exactly opposite interpretation. However this comes out, I think we need to very clearly clarify this ordinance, and we may have others laying out there that are just as confusing or not clearly written. But it's that is the one that gives me heartburn, is just the timing of this whole thing going for so long and maintaining, and if nothing else by tradition, that this has been illegal, and then all of a sudden reversing our position. So right and wrong to me isn't the key issue here. I think the key issue is just what the city has done in the past, our stance, our switches. It just, in fact, I actually wrote back at the last time when we got the clarification. I did say that I felt like we were part of a privileged class. May or may not be, but it's just the appearances. So thank you.
Any other council that didn't comment at this point that wants to speak? Okay, if not, I'll Councilman Jensen.
Well, just to speak to Glenn's point, and yes, we were told at one time, there was times in the past that we were told, just because we were told it, it's not supported by ordinance. I only went in and I just discovered that by going in. I have a friend that works at Big Red. I advised this person. I didn't think it was possible for them to run for council because they were employed there. So I looked deeper into these ordinances and said, and discovered there really isn't anything there that prevents play prevents being employed there, prevents owning stock, but nothing that prevents play.
Okay, if any other council that hasn't speak during this time wants to, I don't see anyone. I'll move to comments from the public. Please state your name and address.
I'm Richard Register for 509 West Military, Fremont, Nebraska. I have the privilege of representing my councilman, Mark Jensen, in this, and also being represented by him. Council did a bold thing. Lawyers hate to say when they don't get exactly right. But when you look at the ordinances, the statutes, and the regulations with regard, on first glance, they kind of look like they're saying the other thing. When you look at the statutes, which give you the power, which is section 9-646, it has the word must in it. But it's when it's talking, it says, if you want to do more restrictions, you must do it by an ordinance. That's reflected in the regulation that has to do with the gambling and the Keno, which is 600-106D, which almost exactly interprets the state statute. Council's pointed out, what's the most important part of this? We have two identical ordinance sections, except for the one line. 505 has the specific line prohibiting the city administrator, general manager, city clerk, and others that they cannot do that. The exact same words before that section is the part that affects you, which is 2207. The fact it's not there, and more important, it was there in the past and it was taken out, says it was meant not to be. Now, I heard this thing about tradition and things. You know, there was a tradition one time that all city council men were told that they had to wear a tie. Okay, wasn't in an ordinance now, was it? If you had a verified complaint that several city council members are not wearing ties, is that something we're going to trial on? No. It's not illegal for you to do. If you want to fix it for the appearance of impropriety, that's something you guys have the power to do under that statute. In fact, the statute lets you prohibit your family members from playing Keno, but you didn't do it. You certainly can do it, but it's not there now.
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. I am in favor of vocabulary. And in my history is if they use the word shall, that is you must, no question answered. Shall means you must. And if the state says you must, I don't think the council has the right to change that. So that's just my opinion of its vocabulary. And I'm not going to get in the middle of it.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. If you don't already know, I was the one that filed the complaint that you currently have before you. I did so because it was publicized in the newspaper. 7 videos have been taken of Mr. Jensen playing Keno. And he took an interview with a reporter and admitted that he knew it was a violation of city code, that he had played Keno for a long time, and apparently that didn't matter. I understand he's been attempting to walk that back substantially ever since it was put in the paper that way, but that's what prompted my complaint. If you admit that you have violated city code, and he did publicly, then I don't know why we're talking about this tonight. Quite honestly, I'm appalled that you're actually conducting a mini hearing before you give the hearing. And the city attorney is supposed to be the prosecutor in that, not the defending attorney with regards to opinion. I made a complaint. It was verified. It was accurate. I can't imagine why you're accepting all this discussion tonight rather than moving to set a date as the resolution requires. It is a shall statement. I understand city legal here has oftentimes been, doing things differently than most of us would do. But I want to read you something that I crafted in regards to this, because there seems to be some consternation over whether or not the folks on council actually have any responsibility here. The current language in city code was the same language in 2018 as it is today. I took that from lawyers and an admonition. When I was a council member, you shall not play, is what we were told. That code hasn't changed. The interpretation by current legal may be different, but the legal counsels that this city had prior to them were quite adamant, you will not play. So I ask you this, is there any person or any group or elected officials that has greater responsibility for or more a substantial interest in or a greater connection to the city's Keno operation than you sitting in the front of the room? Who holds the Keno license? The city? Who's responsible for the governance? This council? Who's responsible for the Keno license and accountable for the following state requirements to keep that license? Who is responsible for putting Keno on the ballot? Who initially approved and was sought for and seeking and now approves renewals of Keno licenses? Who approves the contracts for and the designated Keno operator for this city? Who runs the operation? Does it matter whether the city is running it or you hire somebody to do it? Who ultimately is responsible to the state for adhering to the license regulations, the operation of Keno, the revenues collected, as well as those reported to the state and those that you disperse through Keno grants? If the city comes to mind, city council comes to mind repeatedly in any of your answers to those questions, then I ask, does the city council have a substantial interest or responsibility for Keno in Fremont? This might be why council members were admonished not to participate playing Keno. If you answer in the affirmative, and I urge you to look beyond the reading of state statutes and city code and look at the Nebraska gaming licenses, specifically into paragraph 600-0200, where it talks about and defines substantial interest. It would seem to a layperson reading this that anyone that holds an elected position and voting authority over all of the above has the substantial interest and responsibility. Given this, I ask then, what else do you need in giving instructional legal guidance in deciding to choose whether to have council members play ethically or legally? Certainly, you have the control over those people that are cited in section 2505. They work for you. So you can play under legal advice, but the people that work for you cannot. But yet you hold all of the authority over all of the contracts, all of the operations, and all of the workings of the Keno operation, and you will exclude yourselves when other lawyers have told you, do not play. I'm just really amazed. I could go on, and I'm probably going to run out of time. But I am amazed that we would have a prejudgment and a pre-hearing of this with counsel on both sides acting as the defendant's lawyer rather than a city prosecutor. A complainant by city code is supposed to have a city prosecutor. Was that Mr. Jaycott tonight? He didn't represent my complaint. The defendant had counsel here. The defendant is voting already on measures related to this item. Seems really strange to me that this would all go on tonight. You're supposed to be setting a date for a hearing.
Order.
Roger Roll, 85 South Logan Street. Simple made complicated is now got to be complicated made simple. You have to go to this section and it's interpreted here and it's over there. Can we not focus on what we're here for? Can you go in the Keno? Can you play in Keno when you're a certain official? That seems, there's no gray area there. Majority of the council thinks it's okay and issue a license. And you can still go in there and play. Well, the majority of you will have to figure that out. It's simple to me. You focus on what has to be done. You know, the shalls, the if, ands, or buts. This section, that section. You lost me after the first 2 minutes of this. Simple is focus. We have a problem or we don't have a problem, but finding the interpretation to what do we mean? Well, what do you mean? It's simple to me. You either have the power to pass any ordinance that you want. And so it's watered down over here in this section. So what do you want? Make it clear. Make it so clear that you never have to get advice from an attorney. You never have to wonder when you wake up in the morning, did I just do something wrong? Because, well, over here it says this, over here it says that. So, you know, having it both ways. That's why we're here. When we could be doing something else. So thank you.
Steve Ray, 1445 North Irving. Regardless of what the ordinance says right now and the interpretations that you have, Mr. Jensen admitted to playing it. He's been said that he was admonished not to play as a council president, and he's had other numerous problems that you've tried to censure him and things. I don't know why he goes in the face of that, knowing, well, I was admonished I shouldn't play. I found out it's not illegal for me to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. That sets a poor example for this whole council. And for him to let it do it, I don't know what you do about it exactly, but I don't think he's qualified to be council president. If Joey or somebody is sick or something and can't do his duty for a while, he's going to represent the city. And to my estimation, he doesn't do a very good job.
Greg Carmen, 67 South Maple. You got a backer in me, Mark. You've been a really good council rep for me, and I really respect you. I respect everybody on the council. Don't get me wrong. You think you are on trial for murder tonight, you know, and for playing Keno. My God, if it's such a big issue, rewrite the ordinance so it's clear. And there won't be any ifs, ands, or buts about it. But clean this mess up. I don't see any reason why he should be kicked off the council. Let the voters of the third ward decide that when the election comes around. If he did something wrong, we'll take care of it. We'll get him out of there. But for right now, move on. You know, this isn't a big deal. But I think somebody has an axe to grind with Mr. Jensen. And unfortunately, that's what it's come to in this political world. So hang in there, Mark. I'll back you up.
Additional comments?
Kathy Robertson, 1896 Luther Lane, Hooper, Nebraska. I didn't plan on getting up here to talk, but what I see is you're obviously changing interpretations. You're supposed to be here to determine whether or not, or to set a date for this hearing. And we seem to have forgot about that. What Brad Yerger stated is exactly what happened. You've already had a hearing here tonight. And as citizens of these United States, we should not have to put up with our city government not following the rules. That's what we have in our federal government right now. And if you can't do it on this level, where are we all headed to? Think again about what the statute says and what you were asked to do here tonight, which is to set a hearing, which then all of this comes out, whether, you know, the emails and the this and the that, not here tonight. None of this discussion should have ever happened. And I'm not sure you can even have a hearing now because it's already been discussed. Thank you.
Ray Tuff, 323 West Fifth. I believe, you know, what Mr. Yerder said is exactly what we are here for. It's to set the hearing date. This isn't the first time that the citizens have brought stuff to council about Mr. Jensen. I turned this in back in 2021, in June of 2021, of him playing the Keno, when it was whatever your interpretations were. And we've got, you know, evidence of that, and it should all be brought into a hearing with him being the prosecutor, rather than be doing this up here at, you know, it seems like this council always wants to stop the public from bringing him up to pay for what he's done. I mean, he consistently plays the Keno. We already know that he doesn't follow the drug-free workforce. I mean, come on, it's time to put him up there and make it where the citizens can actually speak. And, you know, if not, we'll follow through with the recall. That, I mean, but that's what the city ordinance reads, that we should have a hearing date set, and that's all it should have been.
Teresa McGrander, 1825 North Keene. I do believe Mr. Jensen knew exactly what he was doing when he broke the city ordinance. And I do not appreciate him making those faces when Ms. Tuff was talking, just like you just did to me. That is very disrespectful. And you appointed him as the president of this council. All of you guys are elite. All of you are to be respected by the citizens of Fremont. Do I respect all of you? Absolutely not. Because you don't make the right choices for the right reasons for the citizens of Fremont. You were voted in and we're not being represented fairly. I believe Mr. Jensen should not be president of this council. He brings disgrace on each and every one of you. And if you continue to let him do that, it will bounce back onto you. And nobody will want you to represent them because you don't do what's right for the citizens of Fremont. He needs to, I don't care if he stays on the city council, but he cannot and should not be president of this council with the disgrace, with the dog issues, with the rescue issues that he has bounced back on. Everything that Mr. Jensen has done, down to the books, to the library. Did anybody care? Mr. Jensen didn't. Think real hard on who represents you as the president of this council. Thank you.
Order.
Mike Gothier, 1408 Maplewood here in Fremont. I'm very confused with this. Okay, I understand Mr. Ellis's situation as far as the taking a look at whether feel you're privileged as far as change the ordinance. Okay, I don't know what this has to do with. I don't know. I don't know him. Never met him. But he represents a ward. He has the right for that. If he's president, he has the right for that. We shouldn't be talking about anything except for what we're here for today. If you want to change something, and I understand if you want to change that, you guys can't play Keno. I don't understand that. There might be some rules. I've never been to council meetings for back in the Jack Sutton days. Okay. It's a little bit different now. I appreciate the fact that we can get up and talk. But the only thing we're concerned about right now is if something would happen, if you were playing Keno tomorrow, I don't think anything that this would happen. It sounds to me, this is the first I've ever heard anything about this, except for a little thing in the paper last week. And I says, I'm going to come here. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, my first opinion was we get money to the city by playing Keno, right? Talking to my wife, says, these should all be required to play Keno. You know, if it's giving us money, okay? We voted for you guys because we feel that you have the integrity to do the things that are right for the city. Not to, I mean, this is amazing to me. If they want to recall, Different issue. Do you want to vote him out? Different issue. If he wants to resign, different issue. Doesn't have anything to do with today. What I've heard tonight, sounds like the attorney says, it's pretty doggone. If this would have happened today to you, and you were playing Keno yesterday, he said, not a chance. We wouldn't have a thing hearing as far as 5-day, 10-day, whatever. Nothing would ever come to this. And that's where we're at. Change, I don't have a problem as far as if you feel privileged and say, you don't want any of the council members to play Keno or do whatever, fine, do it. If we don't like it, we'll vote you out. But that's not what we're talking about, guys. We're just talking about what is happening right now. I respect the opinion of the attorney. I respect the fact that people dug into it and found out that there's different interpretations, but it was pretty doggone clear to me that the law, the state, the city attorney saying, you can play. Play. I don't care if you're ever told not to. Yeah, as far as appearance, if you don't want to play. I never thought if I walked in and saw all 8 of you playing Keno tomorrow, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. How you doing? How's everything going? But that's what we're talking about. All this other garbage that I heard tonight. Some people don't like this guy. Okay, I think someone got a grudge. Don't know any of them. Don't know the people that talked. But I don't think it has anything to do with what we're talking about tonight. Thank you for the time.
Right, see no.
Name is Gene Schultz. I live at 2306 Gene Drive, Fremont. Like I said before, I hate to speak when I'm not prepared to speak. I wasn't prepared to speak because I didn't see where in the public could speak. Item B said there would be a vote on a hearing in 5 to 10 days. Not a hearing tonight. In May, there was one version of the interpretation of what was right. And then in June, as reported in the Tribune, now there's an opposing 180-degree different view. So, and I've heard something about axes to grind. Ever since I've been watching the city council, I've seen grinding axes. I just wonder if this was Glenn up here tonight, if he was on trial, would there be the same uproar? It would have been cut and dried, he'd have been gone. That's the axes I've seen grinding. And it happened to Brad before. So you guys have to get your act together. You have to come up. I don't know. It's confusing to me. So it seems to me that we have a Hunter Biden scenario playing out here in Fremont. So that's what I have to say.
Seeing no other comments, I'll close comments. Mayor Skip Edwards is somebody that I greatly respect. He was mayor here in Fremont for 18 years. Quite a man, quite a gentleman. Most of you knew him well. I have an ordinance here, ordinance number 3824. It was part of the backup given by council. It was passed the 28th day of October, 1997. In that ordinance, you talk about being clear. It says an ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending section 1-210 of the municipal code by eliminating the provision that prohibits the mayor and the city council from participation in city of Fremont authorized Keno lottery operations within the corporate limits. So I think it's pretty clear how Mayor Skip Edwards and that council viewed this and the intent of where we're at today. That's all I'll say. Councilman Ellis.
Mayor, by you making that comment just made the public hearing that we're supposed to be voting on tonight irrelevant now. You have already set forth your opinion. This is making a mockery of our municipal code. That the shall, if our forefathers before us wanted it differently, they would have put may in there, but they put shall. So all we should be doing tonight is voting on a date and time for a hearing. And now we've had our hearing tonight. I just can't believe that we let that happen, that our attorney let it happen, that our mayor let it happen, and it continue. This is not the hearing, but it sure looks like it. So this has all become just a mockery of us as far as us trying to follow our own municipal code. I don't know what we're supposed to do here now.
Council, just to be clear, we could still hold a hearing on whether there was a misconduct that occurred. Misconduct doesn't mean you have to violate city code. So my interpretation, I was just telling you how city code is interpreted, in our opinion.
But you're saying we don't even vote on it tonight. We don't have. No, we're not.
Yeah, because of the language in the ordinance saying subsequent to the passage. And I'm telling you, I don't think a court would require the council to take an action against council's wishes, especially having a public, an open meeting. The council can decide to have a hearing. It's up to the council. It's not up to me.
Councilman Dinkins.
Just a couple comments. I was actually going to say what our attorney just said. We shall set a time for a hearing subsequent to a passage. We have to pass it first. If we don't pass it, you don't set the time or date. That's the way I read that. So it's subject to the passage. The other thing I was going to mention is I think the code's black and white. And everybody's talking about a mini hearing. What I find a little bit funny is that outside of consent agenda, if we don't talk about a subject, we get ridiculed as a council. So we're talking about that resolution, which we do on every other thing that's not in consent agenda. So I don't understand what's different about that. We want it one way when we like something, we want it the other way when we don't. I think that's what makes them mockery. We're treating this as fair as everything else in my eyes. I had some strange comments too about somebody said, regardless of what code said. It's got to be what code said. That's what's in the code. So it's not regardless of what code said. I think that's all.
Councilman Von Baron.
I think we've just poisoned the well on our ability to have a hearing at all. I think the comments are exactly right, and I apologize to the public for letting myself get drawn into that. I think we still owe the public. This is not against Councilman Jensen. I think there's a bigger issue here. We took the position, regardless of what we think the ordinance says, we've maintained the position. I think there's still an open question of possibly what the State Gaming Commission, I haven't leafed through all of this, but evidently if the State Game Commission possibly hasn't weighed in. But the tiebreaker for me is the fact that we had a longstanding tradition. We were adamant in saying that councilmen should not play. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we flipped our position on the day this story broke. And that bothers me to no end. I think if nothing else, and again, as I say, this is not so much about Councilman Jensen, I think as it is about us as a city. I think given what we've done, given the changes, given the trendy word is the optics, the appearance of what this is, I think we do owe it to the public to go ahead with a hearing with the sole purpose of trying to get clarity on this. Not so much as a prosecution or using somebody as an example, but I think we at least owe the public a level of clarity amongst the cloud that we've just created.
Councilman Jensen.
I think the cloud that's being created is just in a couple of people's eyes. It isn't in the general public at all. First and foremost, I must thank all the members of our community for the overwhelming support I've received in the face of this absurdity. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Since being elected council president, there has been action against me to try to censure me for mouthing something under my breath that was never spoken out loud, and now action to try to remove me from council for activity that isn't even against city code. I believe there's a deeper reason for these actions than just to cause me grief. I believe these actions are a direct warning shot to anyone who may consider running for election for these positions. The warning being that if you aren't in their camp, this is the treatment you can expect. The goal being to dissuade people from seeking these positions, giving their people a better chance of acquiring them. For the future of Fremont, I hope this is not a successful strategy. I call on this council and administration to look at how we can better take control of the city council proceedings, which something the general public favors, going by what virtually everyone I talk to wants. People who couldn't even get enough support in their own wards to retain a seat on city council are being allowed to lengthen and obstruct these meetings. It's against common sense and against the wishes of the bulk of our constituents, in my opinion. Thank you all again for all the support. Let's get back to concerning ourselves with the genuine issues facing Fremont and stop wasting time on trivial pursuits in a pathetic attempt to score cheap points.
Order. Okay, are there any other comments from council that haven't commented during this time? Councilwoman Ganem.
Actually, it's the citizens of Fremont, not city council, to decide who their council members are at the ballot box through a regular election or a recall election. Unless there's serious criminal misconduct, it would be an extraordinary action for the city council to remove a duly elected member of city council. Brad Yeager's complaint states that the city council member Mark Jensen should be removed from office because he played Keno. The Fremont Municipal Code clearly states that the city administrator, utility general manager, city clerk, treasurer, and finance director are prohibited from playing Keno. There is, in fact, no such prohibition for city council members or the mayor. The city attorney has confirmed that the city council and mayor can play Keno. Therefore, there is no need to pass this resolution to have a hearing. Brad Yeager's complaint is factually inaccurate at this time. But this needs to stop. This situation is a mess. And I think it tarnishes Fremont's image unnecessarily. Honestly, my family's lived here since 1982. We're proud to call Fremont home. And I was part of Fremont Public School Systems for 25 years. Our son was born here. He and his family live here. Fremont is a great place to live, to work, to raise a family. But now we're asking, a former city councilman is Ward 4 asking to remove a duly elected Ward 3 city councilman. It really needs to stop. The city council really needs to focus its time and energy on the most important issues to the citizens of Fremont. They elected us to build a new police station, to improve our fire department's resources, to develop a comprehensive budget, to improve our city services, and to promote economic policies that create good jobs for our citizens. Honestly, it's time for the Fremont City Council to promote and focus on uniting our community and not dividing it.
Are there any other comments from council that have not spoken during this? Councilman Vaughn.
I need to echo a lot of the sentiments that were.
Councilman Ganem.
Need to echo a lot of the sentiments that were raised by several of our council members that this is a larger issue than what we're just looking at right now, to your point, Mr. Von Buren. And I think that part of that large point is this constant, incessant interruption and holding back of our city government by a select few for what seems to be attention seeking, if nothing else. They're not adding value. All they're doing is detracting and taking away from our ability to get things done. This is not the stuff we need to be focusing on. We have a police station to build. We have a fire station to build. We have roads to improve. What are we doing here? This is trivial garbage that has been shown to be totally inaccurate. And so I would make a motion, since I believe I'm the last person to have the opportunity to speak, or you want a chance, Sally? I would make a motion to, what would I need, Travis? Do I need to table indefinitely? Just not hold a vote?
I would just vote no on the resolution. If someone was voting to approve the resolution. You don't want to go forward with it, vote no.
I'll stay in silent till that time.
Okay, anybody else that has not spoken that wants to speak at this moment from council? If not, again, item B is move to approve the resolution, which would set a time for a hearing. Not less than 5 days, no more than 10 days from the approval. Yes, to have the hearing, no to not have the hearing. But we would need a motion and a second on that item. So I again, take a motion to approve the resolution. Okay, then you would need to have a date on there. Is that true? Okay.
Could you clarify again what the yes or no mean?
So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Voting for the resolution would be setting the matter for a hearing. And if we want to, I believe there's correspondence to try to get a time when everyone would be available for this. I'm not sure if everyone was able to provide time when they'd be available, but I would suggest it would have to be either next Thursday or Friday due to the ability for us to publish, because we'd have to publish for this meeting because it would be an open meeting. So it'd have to be either Thursday or Friday. So I would include in the motion to approve the resolution one of those dates and a time, and that could be written into the resolution.
Okay. Is that clear? Okay, then I would take a motion to approve the resolution if they're and have counsel on this. Okay, seeing no motion, Councilman Von Baron.
I would make that motion.
Okay.
You want to set a date? Do you want to include in the motion a date and time? So maybe July 6th, that Thursday at 7 p.m. or whenever you'd want to do it.
I've not given any thought to that. I think the key issue here is so we could just basically decide on whether we not want to move forward and then worry about setting a date and time.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a second? That motion dies for lack of second. Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned.